Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Enrollment Marketing Weekly Series on YouTube Live. My name is Michael Barber, and I'm joined by my awesome colleague, Ashley. Thanks again for joining us, Ashley, today. Would love to hear how your day's going.
It's going great. Yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. And just for everyone's knowledge, my schedule got totally ruined today, and I am in the airport. So if there's any background noise, I do apologize for the challenges on the background noise. We're going to try and flip between keeping me on mute and not. But if you hear anything, then that's why. So I appreciate all your patience. All right, let's get right into the topic. Ashley, we were going to talk specifically today about what marketing tactics do schools need to think about as they are starting their school and as they get into sort of that mid-year period of 3 to 5 years in existence and then beyond? So I'd love to start this conversation with that question of what tactics do schools need to think about when they're considering even starting a school or that year one?
Yeah. So I would say that phase of kind of marketing is really about activating your marketing and engaging your community and getting them excited about this new school option. So you might have board members or kind of some founding parents, and you can start to tell those stories. You're really going to want to hone in on why you're starting this school, focus on the leadership and how you're going to serve the community. You may not have like a proven track record with graduates and things like that. You might not even have teachers hired yet that you can profile. So your storytelling is really going to be about what your school is all about and who you serve. And so just start, defining those stories, kind of planning out some content around that. Just starting your social media accounts and starting to post consistently. You might not have photos yet, so it's being strategic about the stock photos that you're going to use and things like that if you're still in the planning, gearing up to start, say, in the fall. But it's definitely not too early to start. We often work with schools at this time of year who are gearing up for a first day in August or September of the following year. And then things like branding, your logo, your website. It's okay to launch with a really simple website, but you still want to make sure that you have the basics covered, that it's easy for people to find out who you are, what you offer, what grades you serve, where you're located, how to enroll, and the timeline and things like that. So it's really just about kind of the basics.
That's a great answer, and I'm going to back up really quickly and just welcome everyone in because we've had a few more viewers join us. We're here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. 12 p.m. Central, and 1 p.m. Eastern, talking all things enrollment marketing for school leaders. I'm joined by my colleague Ashley McQuarrie, who leads our enrollment marketing team, and we're talking today specifically about what can schools do in year 0 and 1, what do they do in years 3, 4, and 5, and then beyond from a marketing tactics perspective. I want to return really quickly back to something you mentioned that I think is really important for not only year 0 schools, but as a school is starting its journey, is branding. Can you touch on just the importance of what schools need to do from a branding perspective as they start to build their mission and vision and as they bring their school to market?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's really important to have a strong visual brand. That's things like the logo and your colors and fonts and all of those kinds of things, as well as your messaging, maybe your tagline, your boilerplate, kind of who you are, what you're about, your elevator pitch for your school. I mean, a really strong brand. This is something you said, Michael, that I'll just crib from you on a podcast recently, was that a really strong brand, you could take your logo off of it and your school would still be recognizable. And so when you're in those early stages, you're really depending on grabbing people, and helping them to remember you. And so getting your name, your logo, your message out there, across your community, with maybe things like postcards or yard signs, or definitely a banner or like signage if you have your space, and then online marketing as well. But being really cohesive and strategic about keeping your brand consistent and memorable.
And do you recommend for schools, I know this is a conversation we have all the time with year 0 schools, is do they need to work with a professional designer on that brand? Or do they go to a tool like a Canva? What's best practice there for school leaders?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely use. I would probably use a professional designer. I mean, we have seen schools who start out with a Canva logo and then they graduate to translating that to a professional logo. I think it's worth investing in. It doesn't have to be super expensive necessarily, but I think the professional design logo can really help to add some polish, especially when you're brand new and trying to get out there.
Yeah, I think a couple of good points. And if you're not familiar with Canva, it's a really easy tool that schools can take advantage of on a monthly basis. It's a monthly recurring cost. They have logos, assets, fonts, colors, a bunch of things that you can utilize to help bring your school to life. On the point of hiring a designer, have you talked to Year Zero schools specifically around what sort of budget they need to carve out from a branding perspective? What would that look like for a school just starting out, if you have some thoughts there?
Hmm. We've seen, I think if you have an idea, so even if you start out with Canva and you have a good idea of what you want, that can help to make the cost a little bit lower. When we say to our designer, "Hey, create something," and I don't really know what it's supposed to look like, then you have a lot of revisions, and you're definitely getting up into, potentially four-figure, type spending. But even if you start out and you have some design elements in mind, and you can give them a good direction, you're probably you'll be better off.
Yeah, I think it's really important for any school leader if you're going to, start a school or you want to go work with a professional designer, is make sure you've got a really strong brief, right? You're outlining what your goals are from a branding perspective, who your audience is. Do you need to do language translation? Because that may help from a naming perspective. Maybe you haven't thought about a school name. Are there certain requirements that you'd like to see, certain types of colors, or potentially, hey, do not use these sorts of treatments? That all can be an important conversation for a really solid brief to help a designer. I'm going to pause right here and just remind everyone we are here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, answering all your questions related to enrollment marketing for school leaders. I would encourage you, if you are watching us on YouTube Live, there's a little chat window on your right-hand side. Please go ahead and drop your questions in there. We'd be more than happy to answer them. Our topic today for our 10 minutes together is talking about different marketing tactics as schools mature. So we talked specifically about Year Zero and Year One schools. Let's kind of shift into, hey, you're maturing as a school. What are the marketing tactics that we need to start thinking about in terms of like search, email, social? Some thoughts there.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely important to take a look at your SEO, just continue building out your website. In terms of your enrollment process, you might have started with a really simple sort of pre-registration Google form or something like that. And as you're 3, 4, 5 years old and you're adding more students, it could get kind of unwieldy. So you might be ready to graduate to a more sophisticated platform that gives you more insight into the different stages of the enrollment process. You might be ready for things like email marketing to really keep your families engaged and keep leads engaged. You're really just wanting to build that momentum, to look at what worked for you, what didn't work, keep doing the things that have worked, but also try new things. Ask your parents, make sure you're asking how they heard about your school consistently, survey them, what platforms do they use. I mean, you now have a little bit of an audience base that you can kind of learn about and continue to do the things that resonate with them. And you'll also have teachers and staff that you can profile. You'll have kids on your campus. You can get a photographer, a videographer in there, really kind of start to build out the content that you have.
Yeah, and as you think about getting more sophisticated, I think you touched on something really important, and that's reporting. Can you talk through what metrics as a school matures they need to start looking at in terms of what are the right things to look for search, for email? Would you encourage schools to have a dashboard to be able to, look at how the health of their marketing activities? What are the things as schools mature into that 3, 4, and 5 year period that they need to think about from a reporting perspective, and to be able to track and know what they need to do as every enrollment cycle starts?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely important to know kind of how people are finding your website, how many people visit your website, kind of what times of year. Like once you have analytics over a longer period of time, you have historic data. So then okay, we always get a big spike of traffic, say in August. Like we really need to be ready for those people to come to our website. You want to know what channels they're finding you. So maybe you have a lot of families that are finding your website through organic search, or maybe you don't have anybody really finding you from organic search and they're all coming from links, or they type your URL in directly. So that tells you there's a real opportunity and a need to optimize your website and put some keywords in there for SEO so people can find you.
I think that's such a great point. I think also the one thing we probably should put a point on is the way you work on your brand isn't just a year zero or a year one effort, right? You've also got to continue to nurture that brand and start to think about what else do I do from a branding perspective? Shirts, T-shirts, banners. Where can you sort of co-sponsor as a school in your community to elevate your brand? Those sorts of things. And if you really haven't put, brand guidelines together, it's time to do that, because if you're going to be around today and tomorrow, you need to be able to give your team sort of the guardrails of what does work for our brand and our logos and our colors and what doesn't. I want to ask a question. We just got a question in from one of our viewers from Video Guy Jared. What is our approach to initial enrollment? Say it's first through ninth graders. What's your immediate approach to fill 150 spots over the course of 6 months? I love the specificity here. So this is a great one. This is an awesome one for Ashley and I to tackle. But Ashley, I'd love your perspective. So, first through ninth grade, what's your immediate approach to fill 150 spots over the course of 6 months? Unpack it for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're likely going to have some entry points there, right? So you're going to have those entry points of kindergarten, sixth grade, and ninth grade. And it might be easier to, I mean, if you're going to continue, I'm guessing if you're starting ninth grade, you're going to add on probably the other high school grades, and you're going to hope to keep those kids, is my guess. So you're really going to be marketing to those families that have kids who are entering those grades, and you'll likely pick up.
We have a little clarification from our question. It's just a first set of ninth graders, so one grade we're talking about here.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Much
Yeah.
easier to answer.
Yeah, so just those, then it's still going to be about kind of what those families are looking for, especially at those different grades, and defining those story arcs, really understanding why a family would choose your school and what you offer to them. And then, hopefully, getting out in the community. And if you have some engaged families, we've seen schools who have some founding families or some really engaged board members who can really get out there and help get the word out in the community, online and offline, about why your school, should exist, and what you offer. And we've seen that the first year or two, word of mouth is really important. And then as time goes on, it seems like schools find that they get fewer students that way. And the other tactics become more important. So I would say, in combination with like Google ads, probably, of people searching for a new school, and then just leveraging your team and the families that are starting to express interest or that are involved in founding your school. But,
And then really quickly, I want to make a callback. Talk through, you're a brand new school. Let's go back to the sort of the original question that we started the conversation today. What are the things that this team should be thinking about in terms of tactics, website, search, social media profiles? Can you unpack that again?
Yeah, definitely, activating your social media profiles, starting to post consistently, highlighting, your leadership, and the stories that you have about, who makes your school special, because those really resonate. And then, making sure that the website makes it really easy for people to find out about you and find out how to enroll, how to get in touch. Um, Definitely, search engine optimization for, school in your community. That's going to be really important. Um, and just making it really clear, how to get started, how to get in touch, and what those grades are. And if you're going to add grades on, for example, later on, making clear kind of what the timeline and the plan is, because, a family, they'll want to know, if they're enrolling their kid in ninth grade, they'll get to, continue on, and what the timeline is for adding those grades, and feel confident in that place.
And then do you recommend that we start to understand, sort of in the first month or 2 months or 3 months, what sort of the cost per acquisition is, or sort of the cost per acquiring a student? What we're spending on a monthly basis in, search, or what we're spending in paid ads, or what we're spending in social or with a partner, and then tracking that to how many students we're enrolling, and sort of getting an understanding of like, hey, this is sort of the budget that we're going to need to start to have as we go through this, hypothetical 6-month approach to filling 150 spots. Some thoughts there?
Yeah, it's definitely important to be tracking costs, and that goes back to the metrics that schools should be tracking. So you definitely want to have an understanding of how many leads, how many conversions you're sending, you're getting from your website, for example, from say Google Ads, and then keeping track of how many students are actually enrolling so you can get an idea of your conversion rate, okay, so if I get 10 leads, does one kid enroll, do two kids? Like, you definitely have a good understanding of that, and I'll be honest, not all schools do. So it's really important, especially as you're laying the groundwork for this new school. It's an opportunity to implement those best practices early, and build on them so that you have a really good understanding of the effectiveness of your marketing. I think usually we see higher costs at more competitive times. So keep that in mind. If you can get started early, in January, February, fill that pre-registration list as much as you can. You won't be competing with all the other schools in the summer. You won't be
Such a good point.
competing with the shopping period in
Yep.
December because costs are elevated around the holidays. So you can get a little more bang for your buck that way.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I'd also just do a callback to something you mentioned. Just because you're trying to fill 150 spots, maybe the students that come in, potentially they aren't a good fit this year, but they might be a good fit next year. So driving that interest list and potentially reaching out to those individuals for future years. So making sure you've got your website accommodates that sort of request for information form, and you track, who converted from those opportunities as well, is just, I think, going to be important as you earmark and try and get to that 150 spots approach.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we filled 10 minutes so easy today. We're at almost 15 minutes. We went way over time. And to be fair with you, I would love to keep talking, but I have to catch my flight to get home. So we're going to wrap up our weekly 10-minute series on all things enrollment marketing, and just say thanks to all of you who joined us today. We had a huge jump of school leaders who joined us comparatively to last week. So we really appreciate you taking the time to hop in with Ashley and I for 10 minutes. Next week, we're actually going to have a couple additional guests with us. So look forward to that conversation. We haven't decided on topics yet, but we'll have some ready for you. And I would encourage you, as you have questions on enrollment over the next few weeks, please pop in and say hello. And if we don't answer your question today, we will reach out via DM on YouTube and make sure that we get your question answered. And we will go back to that question when we come back next week. But we're really trying to do these in short snippets and just give you 10 minutes of learning for the next few weeks as we gear up for our next enrollment marketing season for the 23 and 24 school year. So with that, I will say thank you to my colleague, Ashley McQuarrie, for joining us today, and look forward to having you back next week, Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Take care, y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.